Welcome. Welcome to the last session of today. So I hope you're still awake after 2 full days of fantastic Congress program. Welcome to our session about digital signage and digital out of home. Very important technology which enables many platforms, cities and everything really to visualize what smart city really can do. Because we all know if you just have sensor, if you collect data, you need to visualize it. And great big screens, LED projection can really help that and really can convince citizens, convince customers really, to better understand what smart cities are all about. So for the next 1 hour and 50 minutes, 2 hours before the program moves on to the big award ceremony. We have a really nice program. We want to introduce you to best practice, want to show you, how digital out of home, how advertisement and can enable cities really to, be smarter. Because, you see so many great things here on the exhibition floor, but there's always this one question mark, who's going to pay for that? And obviously, out of home can be a solution to that. It doesn't cover everything. But when you look at big cities like New York City, for example, which is probably the most prominent example, Link NYC, I'm sure you all know that. This is a very special case. It's obviously sponsored by Google, more or less, but it's really about combining smartness of a city, combining data with out of home and trying to get some reinvest of that. So that is a typical example. There are many other examples where digital signage and digital out of home can really be a dynamic face of a city and can really show what these smart cities, these transformed cities are really collecting, what kind of data there is, and really to visualize it. So we want to start with Christian van den Brincken. He's from Ströer. Ströer is out of home, the biggest out of home company in Germany, and they are doing digital out of home already for 20 years, 25 years maybe, quite long time, and they're quite experienced this one, and they had a lot of learnings about how screens, where you deploy screens and where they have the biggest effect. And one of their biggest networks is in train stations. As you're all aware of, out of home advertising is all about frequency, footfall. Train stations are the best places in a city you can place screens and advertisement because that's where you have the largest footfall. And Christian will give us a short introduction about Ströer and about the ideas how Ströer uses smart city features to really enrich cities and things. So Christian, the stage is yours.
Thank you.
Please welcome Christian.
Thank you. So, thank you for being here and for spending time with us. So, I will not do what you expect me to do, right? You might expect me to talk about infrastructure and about the nicest screens we're having and about digital out of home. This is what I'm not going to do. I want to talk to you about how people feel in a city and how important this might be for smart city, because when you walk around outside, you see lots of people selling hardware, selling infrastructure, lots of enterprises, lots of cities who are supposed to buy it. But there are very few real citizens, people who have to live in the city and who have to understand how it works. But let me start by telling you a story. Recently, I was cleaning my childhood room. This is an exercise each of us has to do once in his lifetime. And when you do that, you find old books of your childhood, and these books give you a picture about the future. So when you look in a book from the 70s or 80s about cities, then this is more or less the picture you get there. This is how the cities are supposed to look like more or less today or maybe tomorrow. But we all know, frankly, it won't be the case, except some parts in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, maybe. The reality is more or less like this, right? So, quite obviously, we are not very good in having proper pictures about the future. And why is that the case? Because something happened that we had not on our plan 20, 30, or even 40 years ago. And this is very simple for us today. This is digitization, right? It changed the whole game of communication, the whole game of how people interact and talk to each other, the whole way the world is running. So what is suddenly happening is very simple. Everybody, always, everywhere is available and demands information to be available. right? And by doing that, there was a new space that is suddenly coming up. And that is what we all know, the digital space. So we have the real world space in which we can purchase products, enjoy ourselves, have entertainment, all the things we do. And we have the digital space, and the same happens there. So as a combination of both, there was a huge space of opportunities, which we discover every evening during dinner when the family is still on the iPhone and doing some kind of messaging, and we try to get them together just eating. And this space of opportunity is, of course, where smart city should happen. This is where a city is developing, and this is actually, say, the source of business, source of development. And when it works fine, then a city or a smart city becomes a responsive space. This is digital transformation. A space is digitally transformed when it becomes responsive. Like, for instance, you expect a website to be responsive when you enter it, and to better understand what you want and what you need. So more space is actually good news, right? Because it means more opportunities. More opportunities are also, in a digital sense, mean more data. And 80% of this fairground is about getting more and more data. And more data is good because when you use data correctly, you create more engagement. But now the bad news starts to come in. More engagement also means significantly more stress. It becomes difficult for us to manage digital life. What happens when you forgot your mobile phone? Even worse than forgetting your purse. What happens when you go on vacation and you decide not to answer the email of your boss? You're thinking about it all the vacation long. And afterwards, you're going to have big trouble. So managing a digitally transformed lifestyle is something that really puts pressure on us and a lot of stress. However, the core strategy of our mind is to manage stress. Our brain is very small, depending on who you are, but normally it's pretty small, and it uses 30–40% of your energy. So what it does to be sustainable and to survive, it tries anything to calm you down. All the brain is doing tries to keep you calm, reduce stress, and reduce energy. It's strange. The world in which we live is the opposite. The world in which we live tries to have even ever more performance, right? So especially when I'm from Germany, so when something is stable, everybody goes crazy and says, oh my God, it's doomed. So we want to have development, growth, more efficiency every now and then. And we all know the result of this. A dilemma comes up in which we allow more stress in order to deliver more performance until a point where it suddenly falls down and we have a burnout phase. And then we learn nothing, start anew, and the circle becomes closer and closer. And, well, if we're lucky, we make it. If not, well, not so good. So the easy learning out of this simple analogy, the imperative, is you will be successful with whatever you do when you succeed reducing stress. You will have a successful service when you reduce stress. You will have even a successful brand when you make things easier. I mean, this is what Apple tries to do. And of course, as a city, you will be significantly more successful when you succeed reducing stress. This is actually the core, say, key performance indicator you should have as a city. Then, by the way, you will leverage performance. And then, of course, you will be rewarded with engagement because people are happy when they have less stress. And that is smart. That is smart city. When you ask people what is smart city, they say, I have no idea, maybe green buses maybe a Wi-Fi. No, this is not smart city. These are interventions. They can make a city smart, sure, but it's not yet a smart city. When you ask people about smart products, they mostly say iPhone, especially those who have experienced iPhone 1, they will say that was a breakthrough. Suddenly texting became easier. Same thing. Smart means it takes stress that you have by managing your lifestyle, which is more and more digitally transformed. So, must it be tech? Maybe. Tech is helpful, but it's not necessarily tech. Smart has very much to do with a mindset. So, the cities and the countries, we would say, oh, they are smarter than others, are meant to be so in most cases because their mindset is a different one. The Dutch have a different mindset than the Germans. This is why they are smarter, right? So, same with some other countries, like the Nordics. And the smarter a city becomes, of course, the better the system will work. I mean, it's very simple. So when the economy becomes better, then, of course, resilience gets better, right? Because this has been proven in South America a lot of times. Environmental factors, cityscape becomes more beautiful. People like it, and they're satisfied, and the circle of good closes again. When people are happy, they will perform better. So you can even make it more complex, but actually, this is how simple it is. And each space, each responsive space, a city, it can also be a station, a mall, or even a fairground, is actually a system. Being a system is good because it means you have a structure. When you have a structure, it means this can be modified. And when it's modifiable, it means you can understand how each intervention into the system might have an effect. When you throw a stone in the lake, there is always an effect. Smaller, bigger, whatever, but there is always an effect. So, learning sentence number one. If you are a city, or if you are a fairground or a station, and if you do not know your ecosystem, then how can you ever manage it? You're throwing the stones just somewhere into the wood, and you don't see it in the water creating circles. So you should be able to decompose the elements of your ecosystem as good as possible and not just have fragments that are not being intercorrelated with each other. It's like applications that are not connected to the ecosystem. They are like satellites without link to Houston control. This is expensive garbage, right? And each city can list you 100, 200, 400 nice, fancy smart city projects. But do they know how these projects are interconnected? Can they tell you how each project is changing the whole system and how 1 + 1 equals more than just 2, if it's the case? When they can, good. But in most cases, they can't. They just make the list and say, look, it's a nice and big list, and it's bigger than the one from the neighbor. Second important learning, in our opinion, you need to connect that to the people. In most cases, smart city is a kind of a game between enterprises and administration. Enterprises trying to sell products to administration trying to get it as cheap as possible or as easy as possible. But nobody cares what do people think, how do people feel. So you have to create a portal, however you call it, where citizens, enterprises, and administration is being connected. On the other side, the citizens just can't demand that administration is doing it all. How should they do? Many citizens also have the impression that those guys on the upper sky don't talk to me. which is also not good because I haven't tried to talk to them. So this goes into two directions. And creating this portal is something where out-of-home advertising, to come back to the very beginning of Florian, can play a good role. This is more or less our, say, sales approach, right? So it's not all, but it's a pretty good beginning to have simple, stupid infrastructure of digital screens which can tell the people what is happening there, which can be interactive. I mean, we have all of those use cases around here, and we will have a presentation after mine where you will see more details about what this infrastructure can do. And of course, they can connect you to security things, play alerts, warnings, whatever. They can be connected to sustainability by extending it with sensors. They can be connected to mobility by nudging you which means of transportation to use and which ones not. And of course, the core of it is they can be a platform of dialogue. And yes, to be frank, there might be some advertising on it because somebody has to pay for it. So our model is very simple. If a city wants to pay, fine, no advertising if they pay all the costs. If they don't want to pay all the costs, we can offer advertising to get the money in. And we're pretty good in finding clients who want to pay for this. So this is more or less a core model that we are running with digital out-of-home and smart city. So evolutionary, a city can become a digitally transformed system, a responsive space. But the reality is many cities are still in era Web 0.0 or Smart City 0.0, where there was little involvement, where there was managed administration, like a kingdom in the Middle Ages. The king is telling the peasants what to do and is collecting the food and gives all the good. Some are a little bit better, and there was a rough exchange, 9 to 5. From 9 to 5, there was a citizen office. There might be an email or a telephone that you can reach. And let's be frank, this is the case in most of the cities. The next level of interaction, engagement, and participation of people might be an exchange-driven society where dialogue happens at least 24/7. Good, but who is already there? Very few, to be frank. Most are stuck between these two levels. And then, now it comes for the gold standard, for the gold medal. The gold medal means more or less when you have a permanent involvement, a permanent exchange. And for that, you need data governance. Because the main reason why this is not happening is people are asking, who gets my data? What happens if? Who does what with whom, where? Are we already in China yet? So all these kind of questions are coming up and are creating sorrows. If you don't have a good answer to that, if the answer is open data platform 1.5, whatever, bullshit stuff, then this is not a good answer. In my personal opinion, the Estonians have a pretty good answer on that. It's called X-Road. I would love to find somebody who has a better idea, but this is pretty good, really. And you can just install it in your city. You can buy it like a software suite and you install it in your city, and then you have one big problem less. So the even better than gold medal, the future, the vision, so to say, would be a total responsive system where everything is intercorrelated. So where whatever happens is known by the system with its impact on other variables, and where people can easily be integrated in the flow of things that are happening in a city. There is no city, in my opinion, yet there. But there are cities pretty close to what I would call level 4. So if you are a city, what should you do? Define the nodes. Most cities are not aware of the nodes, of the elements of their ecosystem. And if you know what elements you have in your ecosystem, Then you can try to make it controllable, measurable. Then you can try to make it responsive, which means you understand how they change. Then you can make a portal out of them. And the portal, if you do it right, quickly becomes an incubation platform. And when you have incubation platform, you're already there already, but then you have to start anew, right? I mean, this is how digitization works. You're never finished. So when you think you're done, you're at step one. But if you're aware of that, pretty good for you. The bad news is, act now, because the Googles, the Facebooks are not so bad in delivering most of what I said. If we are honest, they do already have a pretty good responsive system. They have a lot of data, and many of the things I was showing are possible by using these platforms. So if you as a citizen, if you as administration don't want to hand over control to a platform which is not driven by you, then you have to act, in our opinion. I would like to end with a sentence I got from Maya Angelou, and she said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And this also is the case for a city. People living in a city will never forget how they feel while using your system, while working and living in your system, and while contributing to it. Thank you very much for your time and for listening.
Thank you, Christian. And I think big pictures are really important for that. Big screens create emotions, and that's something how we can connect to the session, I think.
Sure.
Great. So before we move on, because now we're talking about real digital signage with the very case you have seen here on the stage, this session is presented to you by Integrated Systems Europe, and I'm speaking here on behalf of ISE. And ISE is a big show. It's the world's biggest show about digital signage, about AV integration. 80,000 people come there every year to Amsterdam, and the great news is this show will move to Barcelona in 2021. So if you're interested in digital signage, if you're interested in big screens and projection, LED and everything, please join us in February in Amsterdam, or come 2021 here to Barcelona. You know the space, it's a nice city, so this is presentation of this slot. So the next one I want to introduce now is Roberto Antoniotti from Voilap, and you have seen his great smart city totem already here on the platform and all the screens and everything, and you have the answer to great onboarding from Christian. He gave us some ideas, and now you have a device how to deliver that and make cities smart.
Absolutely, thank you for the introduction, Florian, and I would say thank you, Christian, for the visionary presentation. And yes, I would say, first of all, a few words about Voilap. Voilap is a large multinational and multicultural holding. We are based in Carpi, which is outside of Modena, where not only the balsamic vinegar was invented, not only Ferrari, and a few other interesting toys, but also the world leader in machinery for processing aluminum, PVC, and glass. So this image behind me is not casual. Most of the prestigious buildings around the planet have been built using our technology. A few years ago, we acquired Imecon, a leader in the digital signage devices, with already some thousands of units installed around Europe. Well, as much as we love those products, we thought that combining the skills of our organizations and also using those 1,700 people that we employ around the world in 40+ countries as the sensors to understand the market requirements, we thought it was the right time to enter the smart city arena. And actually, I would quote Christian, to provide responsive infrastructure. That's the way I would describe it. And so we had the honor to launch here in Barcelona yesterday our Smart City Gate 1, the first of a family of products which are combining their functionalities what I like to describe functional beauty, because an infrastructure to work nicely in an environment has to be beautiful. So yes, of course, we design it thinking about incorporating as much functionalities. So yes, beautiful screens to support advertising and paying for it, but also 5G components, because 5G is one of the key drivers into the smart city arena. But again, we wanted it to be beautiful. Beautiful where beauty is functional, so that it can mold into the city environment and actually give more opportunities to create this responsive infrastructure, because it would be very nice to have a responsive device, let me say, in the outside of Sagrada Familia. But you know, if you put there a black box with a glass, you will be considered correctly a criminal. And I am producing thousands of those boxes. So we needed something that again can work in the environment, so to be accepted within the city. And here we are, some examples of how our City Gate 1 might look into a nice square in a modern station outside of an exhibition or a stadium. So rule number one for an outdoor product, it must be durable. It must resist for years. Also because in any business case, if you have to throw away the products after 2-3 years because you cannot see anymore the screen, well, there isn't a sustainable business case, and I'm sure Christian would confirm. So rule number one, it has to have strong fit. It has to stick in the ground to be safe when there are very strong winds or any other extreme condition. And also, we wanted it to be easy to install in the city. So you don't have to build something to put a totem on top of it. You have something that goes into the ground, that anchors itself safely, and that can also work on uneven sideways, all as part of its design. The other thing is that from those feet, we go up with pillars, and those pillars again are designed in two different modules, so they can host a variety of accessories, but also they include at the top lights to signal the presence of the city gate. We have there is a lot in feeling better in a smart city, but in my opinion, feeling better, as part of feeling better, there is feeling safer. So again, imagine a dark parking lot. Well, imagine you have there a 4.7 meter towers with lights which are making it safe, clear. You know, it's an anchor point. It's a safe place. And also those lights are responsive. They integrate with the city platform, so they can be used to signal emergency conditions or whatever, let's say, condition is nearby. And again, one thing about those pillars in the top, there is room for cameras which are, I would say, almost invisible. And again, I put that in the segment of feeling better. I really don't like when I walk around and I see those mono eyes which are watching me, like, I mean, if I'm already guilty. You know, they should watch for the bad guys, not for me. So we have made those invisible. Again, feel better, feel comfortable. Of course, in the body section of the pillars, we have a host of accessories that can be installed according to the choice of the municipality or according to the plans of the business partners. And again, this could be battery chargers, NFC readers, smart lockers, you name it. Here, what we wanted in our design was to try to address one issue that in our view is very apparent, which is the proliferation of devices in a city. So here you have a payment system, then you have a light, then you have something else, and then all of a sudden you have 10 meters of your sideways which occupied with different devices, and also because of the Murphy law, the one you need is the one far away, and it's raining, okay, and there is no umbrella. So side pillars are designed to host as much as possible, again, in technology and devices to make it functional, to serve a purpose, to become a part of your smart city infrastructure. Well, and then, of course, I'm sure you have heard this 300 to 400 times in the last 2 days. But again, 5G is a mega trend. 5G needs a lot of infrastructure. You don't have in your cities that infinite number of places where you can put antennas, repeaters, whatever part of the 5G infrastructure you need. And so, again, we have the top cap, which is cave, so that antennas can be installed, and it's on a rotating base so that you can direct the antennas without having to rotate the screens, because the screens have to be in the right position also to support advertising or communication, while antennas need to talk to each other because of the 5G mesh scheme. In truth, this could also be the beginning of a different look at the deployment of 5G, for example, outside of a smart building. Why cannot have the city gate outside of a building, receiving the signal, distributing that into a building, being at the same time the control access system, the condominium communication. So we envision a lot of opportunities with 5G, which are, yes, within the city, but also, let's say, in other specific areas. One of the most disgraceful things about outdoor products it is when they look old or dusty or vandalized. And again, unfortunately, being a top player in the segment, we know exactly what is the risk. So in designing the city gate, we really paid specific attention to make sure its maintenance is easy, because this product, again, has to stay beautiful, not just to be beautiful for the first couple of days. And so cleaning the basement is super easy, can be done with hydrojet. Keeping the screen in right order is done by the anti-vandalic tools, screens that we have. But also, we thought about, again, it is so beautiful that we will end up installed in the Siena city square. And then, what do? You have to go 4 meters height and fix the antennas. Well, that means you have to go with a ladder in the impossible. And so we included the ladder in the box. And also we included the tools in the box, so that ideally you can walk to the city gate more or less dressed like me and perform the required maintenance without carrying any big ladder or specific tools. So in the end, making sure that it stays beautiful and it stays functional is very important, also because we envision having multiple players. So we have the city and some services, we have digital out-of-home advertisers, we have a telco or infrastructure operator with the 5G. So each one of them will have the access to the right components of the platform without interfering with each other. Yeah, in order to support beautiful advertising, we need beautiful screens. Here, we took all of the experience of the thousands of totems and displays that we have already produced, where the number one point, without going too technical, is the brightness that can go up to 6,000 nits, which means you can see the screen even in the highest, strongest sun, but also that this backlight can be exchanged, because we all know that backlight will die. It's part of its physics, it's nature indeed. So if in 2-3 years it will die, the advertisement will not look good, the advertiser will not be happy, and the business model fails. So what we do, and again, changing to a new device is too expensive. So what we do, we just change the backlight. And bang, here we have, well, we clean it, and then we have, you have a brand new device with all of its strengths. So we think this is key into building business models which are mid to long term and can really help cities and other players to manage their investment according to availability. Last, all of these devices are part of a remotely managed network, so they can be controlled both from an advertising perspective, but also from a smart cities perspective. So, you know, there is a lot of light pollution going on. So you might want all of your screens or your fleet to switch off for 30 seconds every 15 minutes, kind of a Times Square problem. Well, we can do that with one click. And again, that click will be part and will be integrated with your smart city platform. So let me finish, of course, a user interface is provided. This is, again, a gate in the gate. We do not pretend we know everything about it. We're sure that with as we will engage in projects, there will be new functionalities to integrate and develop. So we are providing the tool and the panic button, because the panic button is there to help when troubles are around. In the end, hopefully, we have achieved the main goal to have a product where there is a clear and monolithic form that does contain a lot of function, and indeed, yes, it's beautiful. So, functional beauty delivered. Thank you for your attention. Roberto.
Antonio, I think what's really interesting...
Roberto?
Oh, Roberto, sorry.
No, that's easy, sorry. Antoniotti. No?
Yeah. Roberto, sorry.
Don't worry.
Roberto, I think what's really important is maintenance, because especially when we talk about screens, when we talk LED or so, you know, people just think about CapEx, you know, what's the initial invest, and they always forget about OpEx. Yes. And OpEx is a very, very important thing. And, you know, operating a thing like this, you know, one thing is, you know, buying it, installing it, and the groundwork, it's very expensive. So most people fully underestimate that, how expensive it is, you know, to dig up the ground, to put in cables and everything. So I think your solution really, you know, makes it easier and at least cheaper. And many of the installations, the groundwork, the earthwork is more expensive than the screen itself.
Absolutely.
So sometimes we have customers and we're consultants, so some of them, you know, spend like 20, 30,000 euros just on the, you know, putting down the cables in the ground, and without even, you know, having a screen or a totem, everything. Yes. So that is really important. And secondly, maintenance, you know, being on site, you know, fixing it and everything is also something which costs a lot of money, and energy consumption. To be honest, you know, we're here at, you know, at this conference. We're in the world where Greta, you know, plays a huge role in our daily news. And you know, green city, smart city, you know, comes together, and that's very important. So, did you take care of that? Are you able to manage obviously brightness, but also manage electricity, you know, power consumption, everything?
Well, thank you for asking, Christian. Yes, Florian.
I'm Florian, so that's fair.
Yeah,
we're even now.
So
we're even.
We're friends. So, yes. Well, first of all, the highest consumption of this device is the backlight. Yeah. So managing the backlight very carefully, as we do, is the best way to save energy. Second, we have our own patent for ventilation. That means that even in the highest, strongest, hottest environment, we do not use air conditioning. And also that we minimize the use of ventilation itself because we collect all of the performance indicator of our devices. They feed a big data database, and we apply predictive algorithms so that we always keep the device in the best range of performance, avoiding peaks, which are again killers, and also high sprocket in consumption. So yes, absolutely.
One thing you haven't mentioned is the IP rating, because that's something very important. If you think about electronics, in the open space, you have rain, you have water, very, very important, you have salt. And one of the most interesting things in Link NYC, the ones in New York, is they're struggling with salt in winter, because obviously they're always street side, very close, and especially in New York City or the drive-through things, at a McDonald's or so in the US, they struggle, with all this salt and with diesel exhaust, because the exhaust is right next to the screen and it blows directly into it, and you have all the particles and everything. So what did you do to protect your systems?
Okay, well, again, thank you. It's, first of all, because we control the whole production, so from engineering to aluminum to glass to steel, we create products which are IP67 by design. Okay.
So just a short explanation. What does it mean, IP67?
Well,
the first number means
the first number is
X6.
The protection grade.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it means I would say it can go underwater.
Yeah.
So it can resist to 1.5 meter depth, but also in terms of all of the circuitry is such that it will not collapse or burn when exposed to water. And also, now that you asked the question, also to cold. Yeah. Because that is many times cold is more dangerous than heat. So when you go minus 35, what is going to die is that 10 euros component. And again, we utilize, I would say, military grade components for our electrical parts, so to avoid these kind of issues.
But it's really important, especially when you look at some cheaper totems, which look very attractive, at least in your Excel sheet. The problem is, managing temperature, the heat management, the thermal management is very, very essential. Screens are, they have their perfect range where they're supposed to operate, and that's up to 45 degrees or something. Yeah. If you go much higher than that, you lose your guarantee and everything, your warranty with your screen manufacturers. So it's very essential that you have a good thermal management. And to be honest, only a few of them have them. I don't know your product because yours brand new, but I know most of them which are out there. And to be honest, that's really our experience, of years and years doing that. And most of them, that's a big, big challenge for many products, and that's something to really watch out and make sure that works.
Indeed. So that's very, very good counseling. Absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you. And
thank
you
you
will join us on the panel later on. So,
but thank you
for coming.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much.
So, thanks Roberto. Thanks Christian. Please, it's all yours.
That's it.
We now have a small networking break. And I know you're all busy, you want to go to the wards and everything, so we keep it for 10 minutes, that's okay with you? And then we'll have a panel discussion here, very interesting, we will show best practice, so not only talking about Christian onboarding you about, why we need smart cities and how digital signage can really help, but really, showing best practice, how we can combine green and smart, how we can refinance with advertisement, and obviously we have a very interesting guest because Gabi is coming, he's from Tel Aviv, and they just launched a big campaign 8 months ago, and they screened 150 startups looking at smart city solutions, and he has a great insight in what works and what doesn't, and the role of data. So please stay here, don't go away, we're back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
can give away free smartphones for everybody who's there.
Yeah. You have smartphones? Can we start? Are you ready? There's no trailer, nothing. We can just start. Perfect. Well, then welcome back. Please take a seat. And I promise you this will be really interesting panel discussion, so it's worthwhile sitting here. And because we have a fantastic panel here, and what's even better, we also have some nice slides we brought with us to give you some impressions and some ideas before you leave this conference tonight. So welcome to our second part of our ISE Digital Signage, Digital Out of Home panel discussion. And I would like to introduce you to the panel. So I have to start with a lady, obviously. She's in red, so that's important. So we have Freya Aman. She's from Ströer, and she will show you later some slides. And she's responsible for governmental things, so that's really important. And in the first thing, digital out-of-home company, why do they have somebody like this? But it's very important because main customers of out-of-home companies are cities, are institutions, and you need to understand them and need to translate them. And you have some political background, so that helps a little bit to really translate the business world to the political world. And if you do it right, then you're successful. If not, then you're struggling in small things. Roberto, already, he produced these great totems, we saw that already. And then Gabi, you are new on this stage. Gabi is from Israel, and maybe a few words, maybe you want to introduce yourself, just a few sentences about...
Yes, I'm Managing Director of CityZone, which is Tel Aviv's living lab for smart cities, the collaboration between the municipality and the University of Tel Aviv. My background is in entrepreneurship and investments. So here we are.
Cool. And Christian, Christian, also Ströer, so he gave already the onboarding. So, Christian, I want to start with you. Because you gave us some really great inspiration. You gave us, the foundation of what smart city should be. And now we want to see what kind of building blocks do we need on top of this one. And you're working for Ströer, so being an out-of-home company, obviously, you produce static and you don't produce them, but you roll them out, deploy them, and operate them, static and digital interfaces. So what's necessary? And being a smart city, is it just enough to put a screen somewhere on a square, or do you need to connect it? And where does the smartness come from?
Thank you. So I think smartness comes from governance of the system, right? So as long as each of these elements are just single interventions and there was no central vision around it, it doesn't work. So for instance, when a city says, well, if you want, you can build a digital screen and that's all they want and I get money for this, then this is a very short-minded thinking, in my opinion. If I were a city, I would say, and you add all the sensors you were mentioning, and you add all the great ideas we have here, and I want it as a play-out platform for my information that I bring to my people. And if you do all that, then I give you the right to earn the money back you invest. But this is not happening. So broad vision is lacking, and governance of how to build it is actually lacking. And this must come from the city, because otherwise people won't trust. So if Google would put sensors on German streets, right, people would go crazy.
But not only in Germany,
everywhere.
In Canada, you all heard about that. Even there was a big outrage, about the idea, and the idea was fantastic. But the problem, or the challenge, was it was Google, and nobody trusts them. So trust is a very, very important part, and that's why when you launch projects like this one, you try to do it together with the city to use them as a central.
That's actually the purpose, right? We do have a large department for public affairs. Hermann is there, and Thomas and Freya is also working in this. So there were 20, 25 people managing these relationships and trying to convince our partners what it should be all about. But of course, you're trying to change patterns that have been inherited for the last 50 years. Yeah. So it doesn't change in a day, right? Yeah. It's a long, long thing.
Yeah. Talking about private-public, Gabi, that's exactly your work. You launched CityZone 8 months ago, yes. And I mentioned already, you looked at 150 different startups who all are somewhere in the smart city space, and I think you chose 8 of them or so, which you
11
now, fantastic. 11 is a good number, especially when you're from Cologne. It's Carnival and everything. It's important. So 11 of them, and so. what is the most interesting thing? What are the most interesting projects you saw and initiatives? So maybe you can give us some insights about what you experienced there.
Yeah. So all 11 are interesting, else we wouldn't have picked them to the program. However, we have seen some terrific front-end solutions facing either resident and people within the municipality to improve different services and processes. However, since this is our inaugural year, we decided to focus more on infrastructure that would enable us to do amazing things in the future, but we need to lay the groundwork. So just to mention a couple of examples, many smart cities are talking about video analytics and utilization of cameras for different purposes. It all started with security, naturally, and now traffic management, and on top of that, operational things you want to do with video. One of the things impeding cities to actually move on with video analytics is the cost of each one of the scenarios you'd like to train your system to identify and be smart about. And what we found is an amazing startup that uses synthetic data to train the system and saves all the costs and effort of using manual labor to manually annotate and label 1 million photos of a single use case.
And not only white male, right? That's the problem with most of them. They always use the same data set of photos.
Of course. So if you need to identify your full trash bin, instead of having 1 million photos manually annotated, this is a trash bin, this is not, this is at night, day, from above, from the side, until you get a data set that you can train your models with. Today, you can very easily just create a 3D model, very photorealistic, like in computer games, of that trash bin, and create your data set pre-annotated with a click of a button. And this enables us in the future to use and leverage such technology for many different use cases we will want to use video. So this is one example. Another one, again, related to video, also infrastructure. We're discussing 5G earlier. We don't want to wait to 5G, and it seems that we will be waiting quite a long time if we just sit and wait for it. And we do need to deliver video. We want to deploy more cameras for all these use cases that I mentioned. However, it's a huge cost in laying the infrastructure of fiber optics, which is probably the most reliable way, or go for more expensive solutions as millimeter waves or unreliable ones like Wi-Fi. We needed to find a way to deliver video without committing to a specific place, mobile cameras or ad hoc situations. And we found a startup that delivers video, no compression, based on 4G LTE cellular infrastructure, just like that. And that has been an amazing discovery to see this startup, because this enables us to deploy more cameras faster and cheaper without the constraint of physical connectivity to the network. So these kind of solutions have been terrific to find at the inaugural year.
And they're both security-driven? It sounds like it a little bit?
Not necessarily.
With Israel, you always think everything's about security.
Yeah, of course. But actually, in security, we're pretty well, we're taken care of.
Yes.
And actually, the use cases we're focusing on are more on the operational side, as well as services to citizens.
Okay, cool. Good. I like what I like most about your concept is that you also make data available, because we all learned, from Christian and from all what you said, it's quite easy to collect data, it's quite easy to install sensors, but how do you make sense out of it? That's really, really difficult. And how do you practice that? And I think your concept has quite a nice approach to it. So maybe you can just do a short explanation.
Thank you. So data, for the sake of collecting data, of course, it's useless. I mean, the idea is to identify very clearly the use case, the need, and then identify which data you need to collect for that and how you're going to use that. So Tel Aviv has invested quite a lot in recent years, first of all, in its CRM. And we discussed engagement with citizens. So that's exactly where Tel Aviv was going. Tel Aviv here won the Smartest City Award in 2014. We better win another title before this becomes old news. But still, the reason they won was due to the CRM project. And today we're at a situation where about 60% of the adult population in Tel Aviv is on the CRM of the city. And this enables the city to very well segment the citizens and provide and offer tailored services to many subgroups. So people with children under 3 years old, this is what they usually need. Here we are here for them. People who own dogs. Tel Aviv is the city with most dogs per capita in the world. So this is a big chunk of our population base. People who like theater, etc., etc. We learn their preferences, and the idea is for the city to be with them and for them at any different point in time that they need. So this is one great example, and now the idea is to take the next steps. So let's say one of the citizens wants to subscribe to news regarding their surrounding based on what's going on in city council debates. This requires an addition to existing architecture, because now not only you need to issue a PDF file with the outcome of the debate in city council, you need to geotag it. So people who subscribe to a geographic location can get alerts that some decision has been made regarding their neighborhood. So all these kind of utilizations of data are one aspect. And then we brought in startups that make great use of data. They either collect themselves or use data coming from the city for different use cases. So one amazing example is traffic management. There are cameras, again, we go back to those cameras on traffic lights. It's not just about filming that and making decisions old school, programming the traffic light. In the morning, it's 60 seconds to this direction, etc. And it doesn't really help if you just collect data about how many cars and how many bicycles took a left turn on a weeknight on a single street. What you need to do is to learn from this data and then identify anomalies that enable you to react in real time and change traffic. So reduce congestion on one hand, but also save lives. And this is one of the most amazing things that this startup is actually enabling us to do, is that since you have data collection and you can very easily understand, for example, whether a car will or will not stop at red lights, because you know that there are 10 meters from the junction, 100 kilometers per hour, they will never stop. Yeah. So you can immediately allocate red light to everyone else and block anyone else coming into the junction and getting hit by that violator. So just for saving life, it's already worth collecting the data, analyzing it, and understanding what's going to happen. So this is one terrific case. Another one, again, related to mobility and transportation, which is a very big and heavy issue in the city of Tel Aviv, is around micromobility. So we want to promote micromobility solutions like scooters and bicycles, but on the one hand, because it reduces congestion and pollution. However, it creates a chaos, and every city that introduced scooters for shared mobility is suffering exactly from the same consequences of people ride on sidewalks and park blocking the pavement, etc. So we need to balance these things. And
did you find a solution how to manage that? Or?
So one of the startups that we admitted to the program called Trails, they're actually a navigation platform for micromobility platforms, enabling with integration to the vehicles themselves and different modes of interaction with the rider, they can direct people to the right places. Now, the amazing thing is that they collect a lot of data about where people actually ride. So when you are city management and you need to decide where to place your next bicycle lane, and you see that here there is a bicycle lane, but nobody's using it. Why? It's flooded after the rain. Nobody wants to get wet, for example. Everybody's taking the parallel street. Why don't you set a new bicycle lane there as well? So you can make conscious decisions based on how you lay down your infrastructure for riding, based on data of where people actually ride. So that's a terrific thing that we can get.
And you should know he has street credibility with scooters, because we had a call last Thursday, and I couldn't hear him. He said, "Oh yeah, I'm riding on my scooter along the beach." So I was. So you really know how it works with it.
Exactly.
But talking about data, there are different cluster of data. I know, I'm sure you're all aware of, how Dubai, for example, clusters, open data, Dubai data, government data, everything. Do you have something similar? Because it's quite interesting, because data is not data, and some of them, is publicly available. Some you want to, focus on certain B2B target groups. So you do something similar? Or?
Yeah, of course. So Tel Aviv has an open data platform. At the beginning, it was useless. Like many different open data platforms, it was an offline dump of irrelevant data sets that nobody really cares about and can take no value out of. And once we figured out nobody's really making use of the open data, we started thinking about what can we do differently. And again, it all comes back to the use case. So if you identify the use case of what you're trying to solve, then you can understand which data points you really need, and you can work hard on bringing them. It's always a challenge because you have legacy systems, and it's not always easy to extract data and anonymize it in an easy way to feed the third parties that would want to use it. but we're making efforts where we see a specific need. So it's not as structured maybe as in Dubai and other cases that you've mentioned, but in baby steps, eventually, one of the things that Tel Aviv municipality has been doing for several years now is meeting constantly with startups, not necessarily that want to sell to the city, just seeing how the city can help those startups. So some startups would just want advice from a professional within the municipality, but others would ask for data so they can provide better services to their customers which are not municipal. So then the city goes and sees, hey, how easy it is for me to deliver to this request. And if it's easy, yeah, by all means, we will do that and open this data set as another layer. And this keeps growing and growing based on the real needs of real third parties and companies in the ecosystem that require this data. And if it's feasible, yeah, we will do everything in our power to deliver this data and make it available to everyone.
Cool, great. Roberto and Christian, talking about best practice. I mean, we heard a lot about Tel Aviv, and you have been city of 2015 or Smart City?
14, yeah.
14, yeah, so it's a few years ago, so you need to repeat that. So what is best practice? I mean, you are both in the industry, you're more from the out-of-home side, you're more from the infrastructure side. What kind of cities, what kind of projects have you seen where you think, you know, they're smart and where digital signage, large screens or so, digital out-of-home plays an important role? Do you have any ideas?
Well, my personal opinion is that a city where smartness is pretty close to how I believe it should be is unfortunately a city without digital out-of-home infrastructure. That's Tartu.
Tartu.
So
nobody knows here what Tartu is. You have to.
Tartu is the second biggest city of Estonia.
Second biggest, you know.
100K people. So, and they have a huge university, and actually, they have a zero budgeting system. So when somebody thinks that something should happen, like a playground should be built, you can more or less recommend it to the city via SMS. So you're just sending an SMS, say, I think a playground should be built. And then people around you are being asked, and if everybody agrees, then the project starts. And so finally, when it has been decided by the people that they want it, then this is being done, and the money is taken from the people by changing the taxation of the people living there. Pretty smart, really a responsive, smart system.
But Tartu, to be honest, if you go to Tartu, if you go to Estonia, it's worth it.
It's damn cold, yeah.
It's very cold in winter first, but they have a fantastic museum with really, really great digital signage. With e-paper and everything, it's really, really worthwhile. It's not really smart city, but if you're in Tartu already, pay
so,
for it.
But they don't have digital signage because it doesn't pay off. There is
too small,
not enough frequency. Yeah. This is the reason, so they would have it if they would have more frequency. If you ask me a city with digital signage, wow, difficult. I think Barcelona is pretty good, depending on what subway you take. But if you take the new metro, then this is pretty smart, responsive, all information are correct, and all these kind of things.
Roberto?
Well, Florian, I would say the airport of Venice, I think, is one of the, let's say, smarter projects we have been involved in. And I say smart for three reasons. Well, first of all, there are a lot of screens, but again, you do not perceive you are bombarded with information. So again, I think, you know, comfort. Second, I mean, those screens are, the position of those screens be really chosen with brain so that it serves the purpose of the advertisers as well as the purpose of communicating meaningful information to the passengers. And also, we have created with them new formats, say for example, where we synchronize the message with the escalators. And again, you know, it's powerful for the advertiser, but it's also nice for the people. And last, because working with the airport authority, and we have been able to go one step further in utilizing the flights data, of course, to show timings, but also using the information about passengers, of course, anonymous, but their citizenship, so that if the next flight in 2 hours has 150 Chinese citizens on board, we will display direction information in Chinese. And you know, this is, I would say, very simple, you know, compared to the kind of technology we have available. It was just a matter of willingness to do it, opening and understanding it was important.
Well, exactly, that's the power of digital, that you show only the relevant information. When you have printed signs, it's very difficult to understand, you know, what's relevant, because for every consumer, they have a different relevance. And to be honest, consumers nowadays are spoiled with their mobile phone, because they turn on their mobile phone and everything is personalized for them. And funnily enough, that's what they also expect from signage, being it printed or digital. That's very important. They only expect relevant information. And we have a really nice case, and one of the airports was not Venice, but a similar one. And they had only for one day, they had a big construction going on, so people had to go in a different direction. And they didn't change their digital signs for one day because it's not worth it, you know, it's fine, you know, we'll put a person there and it's okay. But passengers complained about it because they expect digital be always perfect synchronized. Because they're spoiled, because Google is almost always right. It's not always, but it feels at least like it. They know everything, and that's what people perceive from digital, and that's very important.
Yeah, but on the other side, if I just may make one point, we call it the Minority Report vision, right? We have all seen that 20 years ago in a movie, to pass by, the screen talks to you. This is one-to-one. The principle of out-of-home advertising is always one-to-many. So when you cut down one-to-many into one-to-one, then for the one contact you must get all the money you got for the many contacts before to make it affordable.
But if you cluster them, that's a different thing. If you cluster in Chinese or so,
that's how
or
it works.
There's nice location-based content, a really big thing, Link NYC again. They have this nice feature showing the playlist of the block. It's very, very simple, but people, you know, feel that's my block, it's my neighborhood, and I want to see what other people in my neighborhood are listening to. It's very, very simple. It's data-driven, but it has a huge effect. I saw people taking photos of it and proud, you know, this is my hood, you know, and this is the songs I'm listening to. So this is really cool. So it can be the small things maybe, location-based, you know, really. And we all know the more local information, the better. So the same with football results, for example, or so, you know. People love it when they see, you know, oh, this is my son's football club, you know, he's only 7, but I can see the results. They're so proud of this. They take photo of them. So we have this Instagrammable moment again, and digital signage, digital out-of-home, gets a positive thing, and I think that's what we all need to do. Talking about positive, Freya, you try at least to offer a lot of positive things to the cities, and you brought a few slides with you.
Yes.
And maybe you can share some of the things you do and how you bring positive things to communities.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for your introduction. Thank you for being here. So I need my slides now. Play.
So there it comes.
You can't see anything. I can't see anything. Yeah.
5 seconds.
That is a Microsoft.
Thank you very much. Okay. I will talk about how out-of-home enables smart and responsive cities especially by use cases and also by some examples of the close future. Firstly, I will talk about outdoor advertising and digitalization. Then I look at smart city and public services. And finally, sustainability. So let's start with outdoor advertising and digitalization. The last years have shown us that digitalization gives us new media for information, means also new channels to the people. At the stations, at the subway stations, of course, in the subways, then roadside, and in pedestrian zones. So what we've got is a network, a digital network for information, also on your own city. you can use that for content. And I will show you the content that you can use in smart city and public services. The public service can be composed of the following content: safety and security. Then we have service and sustainability, dialogue and politics, and mobility and information. Let's start with safety and security first. Well, many of you will know the Oktoberfest in Munich, I think. It's my hometown. I love it. You have party tents, you have fun ride, you have good beer, good food, well, and of course you have a crowd of people.
8 million people, right? 8 million people visit Oktoberfest every year.
Yes.
So it's a big crowd, yep.
Yeah. Crowded.
Yeah.
Also. So, what you need is a safety concept. Of course you need that. And the screens, here you can see it, the screens in the subway stations are part of the safety concept for 4 years now. And the screens in south of Bavaria in the stations since 1 year. What we do when everything is fine is to tell the people that they can't go in with the rucksack. Yeah, that's safety too. Or that the party tent is full or not full, and so on. So let's guide the stream of visitors. But in the case of emergency, of course, at the press of a button, the rescue, security, safety forces can tell the people what to do. And that is really, really smart, I think. So the next one is that alert messages, you have warning systems. Yes, in every country you have warning systems for the population. So you can interconnect them with the screens roadside, with the screens in pedestrian zones, and so on. So you can tell the people if there's something going on. And of course, you can give prevention hints or search for missing persons. The boy was found here. Well, that's great. And here you can see first formers on their way to school. Please be careful. That's the city of Cologne, and that was in many cities, of course.
And what's really important, in some cases, mobile is not an option, you know, because
Yes.
if the mobile system goes off everything, you still have this infrastructure which works. And that's
Yes.
very important, you know, especially like
Yes.
Oktoberfest, you know, phones always run out of battery, obviously. So how do you want to, you know, get to the audience? And that's where big pictures, where infrastructure really makes a difference.
Yes, thank you. So let's go to service and sustainability. Of course, you can use the street furniture, the screens for news and for weather. That makes it more comfortable for the people. But you can also use it here for sensor technology. You integrate that miniature sensor technology. The Munich startup KGaA and Ströer have done that in Cologne for 1 year now. So we have data. Sao Paulo, for example, also gathers air quality data. What you can do with this data? Well, what you get is geodata as basis of a responsive ecosystem. You take, KGaA does this, satellite data, then the official sensors, then miniature sensors, and what you get is a situative map of pollution. You add metadata, and what you get then is a pattern of geodata, pollution and influencing factors. And that's really smart. And what we hope to do, that's a possible example, is, because it's predictive, the system, to take dynamic precautions. The city can say, well, in 3 days we will have a problem, so we will make vehicle bans, but only for some days, here and there, and you can play it out on the screens. And then, really smart would be, I think, if the city says, well, public transport and parking for free at the next days. So you have a responsive system then. Yes, you understand. Let's go to politics and dialogue. I love that chart from the city of Ingolstadt. It says, wishes, suggestions, criticism. Well, then go to our website and tell us. So they can get a response and they can react. That's online response, and they display it on the screens. I think that's really, really great. The second example is from Tübingen, here, and they have an app, and via screen they say, well, go to the app and tell us if you want to have, for example, a new concert hall or not. I think that's really great. And of course, you can do campaigns for meeting personally, or advertise an event. Or you can do feel-good campaigns, like here from the city of Kiel. That is the senior mayor who says, Happy Christmas, Happy New Year. That's really smart, I think. And of course, you can show that you are a good host. I try. Well, doesn't function. It's just a bit animated. Well, it's in German and in English, and it's a bit animated. That's really nice. So what you see is that the city gets a platform. Finally, for this part, mobility and information. If you will block a street or a bridge, it's helpful to show it some days before. Or if there's an accident, to say it fast. And both you can do via screen, of course. So, to sum up, with this new network, with this new media, you've got a real smart platform for the city. You can solve problems, and that's really good. Last but not least, let's turn to sustainability. Perhaps in the last summer, you've heard that Utrecht in the Netherlands had put plants on the top of transit shelters. That's good for insects like bees and bumblebees. That's good for environment. That's good for us. Yeah. The next one, Bochum, that's a city in Germany. We have moss panels there and solar panels. Moss is really good for the direct environment and the climate. And the solar panel, of course, produces enough energy for the lights in the shelter. And we've heard from Roberto, light is always good, and the night, because it's safe and secure. So, this is my hometown, Munich, and Munich is beautiful, but this situation isn't beautiful, I think so. Well, this would be more beautiful. And We love to do that. The city council wants to do that. Moss with roadside screens. I think it's really, really great, and you can see that it's really, I go back, it's really better. I hope administration gives us the license to build this. We're waiting for it, and we hope to have it next year. The breadth, what's the breadth? Well, you all know large posters. I love them. I really think they're great. And now you can add something. You can add air filters behind them. Little posters behind the big poster. That's a really great opportunity. And then here are the colleagues from Mann and Hummel. Perhaps you like to go in the hall too. At the stand of Mann and Hummel, we have a prototype there. It's also about air filtering. One side is, of course, advertising. The other side is air filter. Thank you for being here. So, let me conclude with saying that we already have many opportunities. So, let's use them. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Roberto, I know you do it already for many years. Is it also an experience we see that people feel more safe in front of a dynamic screen? Even if it's not, one thing is LED lighting, obviously street lighting helps, but even if there's some movement, so people feel more comfortable if there's some moving pictures, and we see it always. We did it a few years ago. We counted cigarettes, in a city, and counted them next morning. We saw there were more cigarettes, in front of shop windows where we had moving screens, where there were digital screens, than without them. So for us, this was not very scientific, but we did it a few times, and it really helped us, to collect some data. And we also interviewed some citizens that told us, oh yeah, if there's something moving, it feels safer than just a plain thing. Is that an experience you also have?
Yes. Well, yes. So we have.
Could you take your microphone a little bit up? Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. So, yes. We have that experience as well. For example, in malls. Mall. You usually see a mall as a very high traffic place. So when it goes toward the end of the day and there is less people, it starts looking a little scary. So I feel that as well, and especially if you are, at 10 o'clock or in a corridor with empty screens or static screens, or perhaps devices which have been shut off in, let's say, to save consumption. Yes, people doesn't feel comfortable. So actually, we have specific functions in our platform. So to handle these conditions, for example, you can just use color, to create a more, a more comfortable environment for the people, and we do that quite a lot. Yes.
Good. Freya, you showed us a lot of examples, how digital out of home and cities and public data, can add value. You're talking with a lot of cities. That's your main job, to connecting the business with the governments. So what are the main drivers? Why would a mayor or a city, decide to go? What are the main benefits, and what's driving that? What are your experiences?
The main driver.
Yeah, why do mayors really? Is it politicians? Is it something they are proud of? Is digital something which they are proud of, which helps them the next election? Is that something like this?
The last one, perhaps. Yes. Yes, but of course, politicians are excited sometimes about the possibilities. They say it's great. Yes, and of course also the CDO of a city says, well, that's something we really need, and we can't do that by our own. So we need a company that does this. Yes.
So investment is a thing to CapEx,
yes,
obviously.
And also the knowledge. the knowledge to have the screens, to have the interconnection and so on, the display, it's not so easy.
Good. Gabi, you also brought a few slides with you just to show a little bit what you do. So maybe, you know, we have a few minutes left, maybe you can share that with us.
Okay, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about CityZone and the key learnings that we had so far. So as I mentioned earlier, CityZone is Tel Aviv's living lab, a collaboration between the Tel Aviv municipality and Tel Aviv University. And I don't know how many of you and how much you know about Tel Aviv, but Tel Aviv is essentially a very small city by any standard. Okay, so it's not really, really small, but it's not anywhere near the mega cities of Southeast Asia or Latin America. It's only 50 square kilometers, less than 500,000 residents. However, one thing we are very rich in is innovation and startups. So Israel has been enjoying an image of startup nation, and Tel Aviv is probably responsible for most of that. You know, Jerusalem might be the capital city of Israel, but Tel Aviv is definitely the capital city of startup nation, with about 70% of Israeli startups concentrated in the metropolitan area of Tel Aviv, and around 35% of the startups actually in the city of Tel Aviv. And what this means is that many of these startups are also in the world and the domain of smart cities. And we have mapped different smart city startups and applications and different domains. We make it our business to understand what's going on in the industry, to support different efforts of our city and other cities in Israel and the world. And one thing, and I'll go back to this point in a minute, which is key to understand, is that most of these startups you see here on this map will not exist anymore in a couple of years, because startups just die. Okay, and part of the rationale behind our program is to see how we can help them survive and how we can enjoy and leverage all this huge amount of innovation in Israel to improve our citizens' lives. So this is essentially the mission statement that we have behind us. Now, we've selected an area in the city which is essentially controlled by a municipal entity on the real estate side, and it's very important to understand because it's a huge part of the model. If you're setting up a living lab or a sandbox, sometimes if you don't select carefully where you do this project, it can really block a lot of processes, because if we want to install some technology in the center of town, there is a huge and very long bureaucratic process of objections from residents. Why are you installing this sensor near me? What about my privacy? Whatever. When it's too soon even to consider such things, because we just want to see if there is any value in this technology before implementing throughout town. Then we will take care of everything else. So we've selected an area which is under the control of the municipality, run by a CEO running this business park that you see here in the photo. So if tomorrow morning we want to install some sensor, we can do this tomorrow morning, no questions asked. So this makes it very easy to start new projects and understand new things before really going into the nitty-gritty details that you might deal with later. So our business park provides like a mini city. All the use cases you'd like to find in a city, most of them we have them already, because it's an integral part of town. It's not isolated or segregated or a sterile lab in a campus of a university. It's a real part of the city, existing since 1972, with 11,000 people coming in here every day, 3,000 cars, parking lots, bus terminal, shared bicycle, restaurants, cafes, a gym. A hospital is inaugurated now inside the park. Cameras, pavements, sewage, street lighting. So the infrastructure of a real city, which is another important point when you set up a living lab, you want to examine technologies within a real life context and see how they, not just how they perform on their own, but how well they integrate with what you already have in the city.
And so interact with each other, right?
Exactly. So if we're talking about, I don't know, LoRaWAN communications as an alternative to narrowband IoT, and we might want to have both of them side by side, we need to test whether they interfere with each other or not. So all these kind of use cases we can actually examine and evaluate in a real life scenario. So it's quite important, and this is why we selected this part of town to be our living lab. Now, basically what we do on top of just trying technologies is the Open Innovation Platform that I've mentioned earlier. This is where we saw those 150 startups and host currently 11 out of them. So the process is quite simple and straightforward. And I focused earlier a lot on the use cases, and this is the essence of everything. We first work together with different municipal entities and agencies to understand what their key challenges are. Because if I do not have an owner who cares about the problem, I will not admit the startup, even if their technology is really cool. And we see a lot of cool things, but not all of them go to our program because we need to make sure that someone would be able to generate value for them. And this takes me back to the point I mentioned earlier about those startups dying. Because there is a nice research from a few years ago interviewing CEOs of startups that didn't make it. And they were asked, what was the key reason for your startup not succeeding? And there are many different reasons why a startup could die, right? You could have a disharmony with your investors or fight with your co-founders. You could be located in a wrong location based regarding your market. Maybe a competitor would sue you and you don't have the funds to fight in court. Many different reasons. But the number one reason, far beyond any other reason mentioned by the CEOs, was that nobody needed them. There were not enough people willing to pay enough money for the product or service that they were building. Nobody really needed them.
That's so important, adding value. If you don't add value to society, that doesn't help at all.
Yeah.
So you need really to...
Of course, now the most curious thing is that out of all the reasons of why startups die, this is probably the only one you could validate before spending time and effort and money of investors and your own time in actually building something that nobody needs. Just find out whether anyone needs it before building it. All the other reasons could happen, you cannot really predict them, but this is something you could really predict. And the fact that we start the process by identifying that there is a real need of a real customer within the municipality, this is the starting point, and this is a huge value for the startups, because startups that get into our program, they get three things essentially. They get a place to work from inside the lab, so if they want to test technology that they're building hardware as well, we have hardware startups, not just software. They can do that just downstairs. No other place in the city would enable them to do that for the same bureaucratic reasons that I mentioned earlier. And they also get access to the municipal data that I mentioned earlier. And they would get the municipality as a design partner. So each startup gets allocated 2 people of contact within the municipality, 1 from IT department to deal with integration and data flow, etc. But more importantly, the owner of the challenge that this startup was admitted to solve. So someone from the professional department who has the challenge would accompany this startup throughout a full year. It's 12 months. It's not a short-term accelerator. And during that year, the startup would run pilots and iterations and get feedback so they can mature their technology, their product, and their business model with the insights of a real-life customer. Now, if everybody's happy, the next stage would be a commercial collaboration with the city, but it's not mandatory. Nobody is committed. We don't take any equity of the startups, nor a commercial stance within this process. And we just help them thrive. And our ambition is to help them long term. So we help them raise funds. We help them find other customers. And I'll mention this in a second. Why? Because we know that if this startup would die because they couldn't find enough customers, we've just invested a year in a startup to solve a real problem that we have in the city. The startup did not make it. We need to invest another year in a new solution. So if we want to make sure that solutions adopted by our city are long-term solutions, we need to help them long-term as well.
And how many of them need an infrastructure? Because when we talk about screens, when we talk about things, infrastructure plays a huge role. You can do a lot of stuff in your lab and mobile and everything. But and I think, are the majority of your startups, do they have some physical hardware? Or
so some of them do. We have one startup called RoadSense. They're building radars to count people and vehicles in the city without compromising privacy, for example. So that's like a unit that they need to install in the field. We have RadGreen, which is environmental sensors for radiation, pollution, and noise. That's also hardware. But most of them are of course, software. It's much easier with that. We need some quick wins also. This is our first year as a project. So the idea is a great example of software to keep people's privacy. They switch faces of people in a video with computer-generated faces, so you're not recognizable in videos, and the city can use all these cameras for the different purposes without compromising people's privacy, for example. So these kind of solutions are software only. It's very easy to give them samples of data for them to develop. So this is the Open Innovation Program that we're running. We also run corporate partnerships, so it's not only about the city, and I'm going to mention it more in depth in a minute, but it's not just about what the municipality does to solve different and urban challenges. It's also about how the private sector interacts with that, and what can you do, and how can you create this round table of municipality, corporate, startups, innovation to brainstorm and come up with new solutions. Some challenges are internal to the corporate, some are actually municipal. So we already have a few nice partners like Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi, and Dell, and Cisco in different domains, and we are welcoming more corporates in different domains that want to get involved with us. We partner with other cities, again, for the same reason of opening doors to our startups to other markets. We know that the Israeli market is quite small. Tel Aviv is probably one of the only paying customers potentially for these startups in Israel, and we do want to help them grow. So we collaborate. We already have agreements in Berlin and in Moscow, and a few other cities are now discussing with us to exchange ideas and information and say, hey, Moscow, this solution for your problem, we checked it already, it doesn't work. Why don't you try something else? And why don't we discuss the challenges jointly and run hackathons together to bring up new solutions? And most importantly, soft landing mechanisms for our startups to go and sell elsewhere. They need someone local to open the right door to the right person for them and start selling. So this is about the partnerships. Now, 2 key learnings before we wrap up. First of all, why should startups focus on cities? That goes without saying. If you came to this expo, you understand the impact of cities to our futures and why also startups should care about that. This is the right timing. The big corporates understood that a few years ago. The IoT proliferation, etc. And now it's time for startups to follow through, or they're going to lose the market to the big corporates. There is a lot of money in the industry. It's not always easy to get it, but the money is there and starting to be allocated to different projects, and openness to innovation with programs like ours that we see such programs are being started in other cities as well. And however, it's not only about municipalities, and if you're a startup working in urban tech or smart cities, it's not just about going after cities and chasing cities, because in many cases, the city is not going to be a relevant client. The city could be your enabler or collaborator or regulator. Airbnb is a great example, right? So the problem is the lack of hotel rooms in a city, but the city has nothing to do, apart from regulating if cities want, the entry of such a solution, and it's a B2C solution. The same goes for Lime or Bird in the scooters. So the city provides the context, but nothing more than that. So sometimes the city isn't really your client, so identify your client properly. Also, go-to-market strategies is key, because sometimes startups, due to the design of public procurement processes, those processes were not built to source innovation. They were built to protect public funds. And there is a huge gap between that need to protect public funds and be very cautious and move very slowly, and the need of a startup to go fast and quickly. Sometimes a startup would never meet the minimum requirements to participate in a tender because they don't have enough revenues. So actually piggybacking on a huge corporate and going together to a tender is actually the only feasible go-to-market of a startup. And the last thing is, again, not just the money that the corporates might have, but also their speed. They move much faster than municipalities, and this is why the startup can gain a lot of traction before really hitting the ground. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. You're glad you don't see our screen because it's flashing already.
Yeah, sorry.
Way over time. So we talked a lot about platforms. We talked about services, because just installing a screen, just having a digital out-of-home company doesn't make you smart. It helps you to install an infrastructure which you need. I mean, with beautiful totems, with out-of-home business cases. So that's what we really wanted to bring along. What's really important for us is, you need a platform, you need a concept how to manage the data and how to get insights, because just the purpose of collecting data doesn't help anyone. It's really, mixing it, having infrastructure, which is absolutely necessary, and if you're smart enough, also to refinance this with the private industry. Maybe there was some of the insight we could share with you, and most of you will be here tomorrow, so if you want to visit their booth or everything and you have some questions, you will still be here a few minutes. So thank you for attending our session, and if you're more interested in digital signage and big screens and LED, please come visit us at IEC in Amsterdam in February or in 2021 here in Barcelona. Thanks a lot.